This clip is sponsored by Med Travelers. If you're an SLP interested in travel therapy, visit medtravelers.com to get started. Getting out of school and, we hear a lot about multidisciplinary. And so it was a shift for me to start thinking of things as transdisciplinary. Can you explain the difference between what those two are, just for if somebody like me who's like, well, I know one really well, but the other ones I'm less familiar with?
Yeah, and multidisciplinary, again, you've got your PT, your OT, your speech therapist, your um, medical doctor, your nurse. You have all these different disciplines and mental health, and you're all an expert, I guess, per se, in your own discipline. So when that child needs motor, we get that PT. When the child needs speech or feeding, we get that speech therapist or OT. So you're working just in your discipline, but this family has all these disciplines that are coming in, and whether it's in early intervention pediatrics or whether it's in adults, you have all these different disciplines. Whereas transdisciplinary, you may have one discipline in there who might be the primary one, the primary focus. This family or this patient's major concern is, I got to get moving. I got to get mobility. So that primary person going in there is physical therapy. But as a transdisciplinarian, again, we're realizing, well, gosh, we really need to work on nourishing this child. They need to be feeding. They need to be interacting in order to move across that floor, right? They don't. So that's where that transdisciplinary comes in. You can work on all these areas. Doesn't mean I'm an expert as a speech therapist, and I'm not an expert as an OT or a mental health person, but I have a very good understanding of those different disciplines to be able to work with the whole child. So that's sort of my difference between multidisciplinary. You've got all the different disciplines all working with this family. So think of a circle of the family, and these disciplines are all out there, the spokes of the wheel. They're all giving their input. Yeah, whereas transdisciplinary is you're all encompassing.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. And so when I think about it as well, I did these, arena assessments with little guys, kind of like what Child Find does. So, this child would come in and it'd be myself, an OT, a PT, maybe a ECSE, but each of us would be looking at just our area. So the PT is going to say, okay, here's the things we're going to do to see how you're moving. And we're all in the same room, but we're each looking at our own very specific discipline skills. So I'm going to do the receptive and expressive, and then this person's, and then we all say, okay, here's my information, here's yours, combine it together in a report. But it's valuable, but it's very siloed. Whereas when I started with you all in the NICU team, I think the biggest thing that it helped me realize was it really forced me to look at this, just like you said, as the whole baby. So instead of looking at, I just want to see what they're doing with, feeding and swallowing or communication, it became, well, yeah, when I see that they don't have any strength or coordination in other parts of their body, of course, that's going to impact their feeding. Or, wow, they're, cannot regulate. They're completely fussy and disorganized and distracted. So of course, they're not going to be able to focus on eating and to get the nourishment they need to grow. So it really was, when I say changed how I operate as a professional from then on out, it really did. And I think it just made me a better professional, where it's not, and I think sometimes we feel so afraid to, well, I'm not a PT, so I'm not going to go there. And I'm not a this. And like you said, it's not at all me saying, oh, well, I'm going to pretend to be this or that, but it's having that understanding that every single thing impacts the other areas. And you can't, once you get it and see it, you can't separate it. I mean, don't you feel like you can't look at just your PT area anymore at this point?
Right. No, not at all. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, I think you still have your discipline glasses are your strongest, right? Because that's what but you're, like you say, if a child's just laying back like this because they don't have any strength to come to midline, their muscle tone is so limp, and you're expecting them, they're in this position, you're expecting them to suck, swallow, and breathe. Or if they're at the level that they're ready to eat purees or Munchables, and you're expecting them to swallow correctly when they're in this position, So does that have anything to do with PT? Well, yes. But does it also have anything to do with how you're going to approach feeding and swallowing, even with speech? You can't expect great speech sounds, coming from a child who's back here, or doesn't spend any time on their tummy and they're not getting those forward mouth sounds. So they're all related. As parents not interacting with them, how's that child going to do well in those areas?